The Galactic Peace Summit was supposed to be a historic moment, a final agreement to end centuries of conflict. Dozens of species had gathered at Concordia Prime, a neutral station floating in the void, a symbol of diplomacy. But despite the grand setting, the air was thick with tension. At the center of it all sat the Zenari Dominion, their delegation radiating quiet authority. Cold, calculating, and patient, they had orchestrated these talks, ensuring every clause of the treaty leaned in their favor. Across from them, the Velith Pact representatives sat rigid, their desperation evident. They had no choice. Their worlds were on the brink of collapse, and peace, no matter how unfair, was better than extinction. Then there were the humans. Late arrivals, silent observers. Ambassador Elias Carter sat expressionless, watching the proceedings unfold. The Terran delegation had yet to say a word, which only added to the growing unease. They were new to galactic politics, untested, unpredictable. No one knew what to expect from them. The talks dragged on, filled with rehearsed speeches and empty gestures. Every concession given to the Velith was met with 3 new demands from the Zenari. It wasn't peace, it was slow, calculated surrender. Yet no one objected. No one dared to. Then, a final document was presented. The treaty, ready for signatures. Archduke Vrexen, the Zenari lead negotiator, allowed himself a smirk. It was done. Ambassador Carter finally spoke. His voice was calm, deliberate. This isn't peace. Silence. The room turned to him. This is control. A leash, dressed up as diplomacy. He glanced at the Velith delegation. And you're just going to sign it? A murmur spread through the hall. Vrexen's smirk remained. Humanity is young. You don't understand how delicate these negotiations are. Carter leaned forward. I understand perfectly. You're offering protection in exchange for obedience. That's not a treaty, that's a surrender. The Velith leader hesitated but said nothing. The Zenari knew their fear well. They had already won. Vrexen's tone grew sharper. Do not mistake stubbornness for wisdom, Ambassador. This agreement is the only path forward. Carter stood. No. It's the easy path. The coward's path. He turned, addressing the entire room. And humanity won't be a part of it. Gasps. The statement echoed through the chamber like a shockwave. No one had ever walked away from the Galactic Council. You can't just leave, one of the Velith delegates stammered. Carter didn't answer. He simply gestured, and the Terran delegation followed. Step by step, they walked away from the table, from the treaty, from the galaxy's expectations. The last thing Vrexen said before the doors closed behind them was almost amused. They'll regret this. The shock of humanity's exit rippled through the chamber. Dozens of diplomats exchanged stunned glances, whispering in disbelief. No species had ever defied the Council this way. Walking away meant isolation, irrelevance, or worse. The Velith Pact representatives looked stricken, as if humanity had just doomed them all. Vrexen recovered first. His smirk returned, laced with condescension. Well, he said smoothly, that was unexpected. But irrelevant. The treaty stands. One of the Velith diplomats, HFY, shifted uncomfortably. But, without humanity, the humans never mattered. Vrexen's voice was absolute. They're young, arrogant. This was a tantrum, nothing more. A few delegates chuckled, relieved by his certainty. Others remained silent, glancing toward the doors where Carter had disappeared. Something about it felt different. Beyond the chamber, Carter and his team moved with purpose. Aides hurried alongside him, whispering warnings. This could cost us everything. The Council won't forgive this. Carter remained unfazed. Then we were never welcome here to begin with. Back inside, the Velith delegation wavered. Their leader, High Chancellor Veshti, looked towards Vrexen, then toward the exit. Perhaps, we should revisit some of the terms. Vrexen's expression darkened. The terms are final. A long silence stretched between them. For the first time, cracks appeared in the illusion of unity. Word spread fast. Within hours, broadcasts across the galaxy carried the headline, "Humans walk away from peace talks." Some called it reckless. Others called it insane. But among those long resigned to Zenari dominance, another word took shape. Hope. In shadowed corners of the galaxy, messages were sent, hushed discussions held. If humanity could say no, perhaps others could too. On board the Terran flagship, Carter stared at the stars beyond the viewport. The Council thought they had won. Thought humanity had thrown away its only chance at galactic diplomacy. They had no idea what was coming. The galaxy reeled from humanity's defiance. The official narrative painted them as impulsive, reckless, a species too immature for diplomacy. But behind closed doors, the reaction was far more uncertain. The Velith Pact wavered, some questioning if they had been too quick to surrender. The Zenari Dominion, despite their public dismissal, held emergency meetings. Humanity's actions had set a dangerous precedent. If one species could walk away, others might follow. Vrexon addressed his advisors with icy confidence. The humans made a spectacle of themselves. Nothing more. Yet, for the first time, there was doubt in his voice. Meanwhile, on the Terran flagship, Carter monitored the fallout. His aide, Lieutenant Singh, frowned at the incoming reports. They expected us to beg for a seat at their table. Carter's expression remained unreadable. That was their first mistake. A secure transmission flickered to life. A Velith official appeared on screen, HFY. He hesitated before speaking. I don't know if you realize what you've done. Carter folded his arms. We know exactly what we've done. HFY glanced over his shoulder as if someone might be listening. There are those among us who don't want this treaty. But opposing the Zenari means war. Carter's response was immediate. Then you've been at war this whole time. You just didn't fight back. Silence stretched between them. Then, HFY exhaled. If we were to resist, we'd need more than words. Carter leaned forward. Then it's a good thing we brought more than words. Humanity hadn't walked away in defeat. They had walked away because they never intended to play by the Council's rules in the first place. As the Velith wavered, as factions reconsidered their loyalties, the Terran fleets were already on the move. The galaxy had spent too long under the illusion of peace. It was time for something real. The Velith Pact fractured. Some clung to the treaty, terrified of the consequences. Others, emboldened by humanity's defiance, refused to sign. For the first time in centuries, the Zenari Dominion's control was slipping. The illusion of unity had cracked, and cracks only grew. Zenari warships moved to restore order, their fleets mobilizing under the guise of enforcement. The message was clear: resistance would not be tolerated. But something had changed. The old fear wasn't working. Not like it used to. Then came the broadcast. A simple message, transmitted across every major network. If you're tired of being afraid, stand with us. Humanity hadn't vanished into isolation. They had been preparing. Alliances formed in the shadows, old grudges reignited. Smuggled weapons reached rebel hands, encrypted coordinates found their way to dissidents. The Velith Pact was no longer just a fragile alliance of the weak. It was becoming something else, something stronger. Vrexon stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching reports flood in. Protests. Military defections. Skirmishes on the fringes. He gritted his teeth. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Then came the final blow. A Terran fleet, appearing where no fleet should be. The first strike was swift, precise, cutting off a Zenari supply line in a system they thought was secure. It wasn't a war for conquest. It was a war for something greater. On the bridge of the Terran flagship, Carter watched the battle unfold. This wasn't the easy path. It wasn't the safe one. But it was the only one worth taking. The galaxy had been given a choice. And for the first time, it wasn't being made out of fear.